Hi, thank you for watching my channel today. My name is Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf. And today I'm going to be doing my wrap up of the books of the year for me. This year I started BookTube and I'm massively grateful to everyone who subscribes and comments and likes my videos, and I really am loving doing it. It all came about after I had a chat with Simon from Savage Reads, and he really encouraged me to start my own channel, and so I did, and I'm absolutely loving doing it. And it's really increased the amount of books that I read in a year. Normally I've always been somebody who's absolutely obsessed with books, but since I've had children I think I read quite a bit less, just because work's really busy and 2 children under 4, and so I was reading about a book a fortnight, and I've managed to double it now to at least a book a week, and so that was starting from April. So I've done, I think, quite well in terms of reading this year, and it's been quite difficult to pick. I haven't stuck to a specific number, I've just picked the books which are my favourites from the year. I was a bit surprised actually by my favourites, because some of the books that I gave 5 stars to I haven't included on this list, and some of the books I gave 3 stars to I have included. And I think that just shows that your feelings about a book can change over time, because some books which I loved at the time, they've been, I guess, less rememberable, and others that I thought, yeah, okay, that's fine, I've thought about a lot more than I thought I would. So anyway, I'll just get on with it and stop rabbiting. So my first book of the year was this one, The Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan. So this follows, forgive me, I'd have to check the characters' names again. This follows Dorigo Evans, who is a doctor, a surgeon in Australia in the Second World War, and it follows before the war when he is in love and his relationship, and then it follows him during the war when he becomes a Japanese prisoner of war. And this book is very evocative, very powerful, very emotional. It takes you to the Japanese prisoner of war camps like nothing I've ever read before, in terms of the description and the smells and the sights and the sounds and the atrocities, and you really get to know the characters. You root for them so much, you care about them so much, it moves you so much. And my granddad was a Japanese prisoner of war, so this has an extra resonance for me, and it's one of the most powerful, beautiful books I've ever read. So this one I would definitely, when you're, obviously you have to be in the right frame of mind for a read like this, but when you are, then I'd definitely recommend it. 5 stars, phenomenal. The next one is a non-fiction book. This is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. So I've done a separate video purely about this book, and so I'm not going to talk about it for a long time, but this one obviously has particular resonance to me because I am a doctor and I was a junior doctor for a long time, and this made me absolutely howl with laughter. It was so funny, but there's also a really serious underlying message about how hardcore it is to be a junior doctor, and the emotional turmoil that you go through, but also the absolutely hilarious things that happen on a daily basis, and the ridiculous things that happen to you. So if you're looking for something which is non-fiction and is funny, like, books really rarely make me laugh out loud, this made me absolutely die laughing. It was so funny. So definitely would recommend this one. The next book on my list is by somebody who has become one of my favourite authors, and this is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I came across him when I read 1,000 Splendid Suns, and I've gone on to read that once or twice more because I adore that book. So when I saw The Kite Runner in a charity shop, I bought it, and it is just as wonderful. His books are set in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and often before the modern day, the way that we think of those countries at this point of time, when they were much more liberal. And this book is just, oh my goodness, it's so amazing. It's about 2 boys, Amir and Hassan, and Amir and his father are the employers of Hassan and his father, and Amir always thinks that his father prefers Hassan, so he's always trying to impress him all the time. And it's about them growing up, and there's an act of betrayal which occurs between the boys, and it's about how their lives change after that. And it will make you just, it's very emotional. It's one of those books that will never it will never leave you. It's gone on to my favourite books of all time list. It's about the power of friendship. It's about family. It's about ties, loyalty, trust, betrayal. It's about I don't know, about the society that people live in, how it shapes them. And it's just, you really get a grip with these characters. You really get to know and love them and care about them so much, and it's very emotional. So it's great to as well experience that set in another country, which helps you learn a little bit about the history of the countries involved. So like I said, it's gone on my favourite book of all time list, and I love it. The next book on my list, I did not give it a 5 stars, but the emotional impact of the book stayed with me. I've thought about it so many times that I couldn't not put it on my list, and that is The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Steadman. This is about a lady called, what's she called? Izzy, and her husband Tom, who live in a very remote place where they look after the lighthouse, and they've lost, in pregnancy, they've lost 3 children, and she's desperate for a baby. And one day a baby washes up in a little boat up to their island, and she wants to keep the baby. And her husband says, well, she could have a mum who's desperately searching for her, which she does. And so it's about, what should they do? It's about 2 mothers who are both facing loss and who both adore this little girl who washes up on the shore. And about the story of whatever they do, somebody's going to be the loser and somebody's going to be the winner, and the little girl is stuck in the middle. And as a mum, this will tear you to bits, because it constantly there's this knowing that one of them's going to lose their child. And so I think I might have not had as an emotional impact if I hadn't been a mum reading this, but because I am, you obviously put yourself in their position, and it absolutely broke my heart. I had tears rolling down my face when I read it, and I will never forget it, I don't think. So although I gave it 4 stars, it's still one of my books of the year. The next one I have is The Idiot by Elif Batuman. This was a proper Marmite book. So some people hated this book, some people loved this book. I was one of the people who loved it. It is very literary. It is about a girl called Selin and her time studying in America at university, and the theme of sort of woven through the book is about how you can be super intelligent but not have much in the way of emotional intelligence and life experience. So Selin is very academic and gifted in that way, and so are her friends, but they don't know much about the ways of the world. And it's just, there's a lot of stream of consciousness writing in this book. There's lots of bits where it's not plot heavy at all, like not massive happens in the book, but it's all about sort of Selin and her thoughts and her conversations and her friends. And I just really liked the style. Like, I definitely read more work by Elif Batuman. This was a long-listed book for the Women's Prize for Fiction. I think it got on the shortlist as well, actually. It's quite long, and it's got quite a lot about language in it. I didn't know if it would be my cup of tea or not, but I really like books that are set in universities and schools, and so that's why I wanted to read it, and I'm really glad that I did. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I certainly enjoyed it. Next, I have a non-fiction book which I haven't wrapped up yet. So this is I've only just finished reading this one. It's a very special book, and I will be wrapping it up, obviously, in my end of December part 2. That is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. This book is 20 years old, and I heard about it through Oprah. She did a podcast with Mitch, and they discussed this book for the whole duration of the podcast. This book is about, so it's a memoir. Mitch was a college student, and he had a teacher called Morrie Schwartz, and Morrie was one of those teachers that some people have who they never forget and they really influence their life, like people who were born to be teachers. And Morrie says to Mitch, keep in touch after you graduate, and then 16 years go by and he hasn't kept in touch. And then Morrie gets diagnosed with motor neurone disease, and Mitch hears of this and decides to reconnect with Morrie. And they end up having every Tuesday They have a Mitch flies over to Morrie's house, and they have what they call their final class together. They write their final thesis, and they talk about subjects to do with family, love, forgiveness, death, lots of children, career, lots of things. And Morrie is like a really wise man, and he helps Mitch talk to him, because I think he's got a different perspective on life because of the fact that he's dying, and it talks about his death and his leading up to death and the wisdom that he acquires during this time. And it's beautiful. I read it in 2 days. I actually annotated quite a lot of the book, which I don't normally do, just because there was bits I knew I'd want to go back to, because there's a lot of good teaching in this book, and I'll talk about it in more depth when I do my wrap up. But this was a real little gem, and so it's definitely one of my books of the year. See, maybe I should have limited this because, yeah, there's quite a few books, but they're all my books of the year, so never mind. Right, next, I have another new favourite author. 2 of her books have made it onto my favourite of the year list. The first being Tin Man, and that is by Sarah Winman. This is a beautiful book. This is only short. My friend Rooney lent this to me. It is following 2 boys called Elif and Michael and a girl called Annie, and their relationship with each other. And you can't really talk too much about the plot, because if you do, then you'll spoil it. But her way of writing is just so amazing. Like, she doesn't write in a way which is full of like descriptive text, which makes it heavy going. She puts these beautiful sentences into her writing which just make you stop and think, oh my god, that was amazing. But it's really easy to read at the same time. So it's and their stories always focus on relationships, and she does that so well. And she just, like, they're really comforting and really sad and really emotionally charged and really beautiful. And this focuses, like I say, on the relationship between the 2 men and how the 2 men's relationship with the women all links them together and what happens. And I just absolutely adore this book. If you haven't read it, you have to, because it's so good. And that I might as well then talk about the second book by Sarah Winman, which made it onto my list and which I got from the library, which is When God Was a Rabbit. Forgive me, but I can't remember the characters' names, but I think the girl was called Ellie, and I can't remember what her brother was called. But the relationship between the 2 of them. And so this one focuses on a brother-sister relationship, and it starts in their childhood and it follows them all the way through their growing up. And I love that, because I have a younger brother who I grew up with, obviously, and I can see like parallels in their relationship and our relationship. And it talks about when they go to university and they're not living together anymore, and it talks about just how their lives are different from each other. And it was just as fantastic as Tin Man. I absolutely love them both, and Sarah Winman is definitely one of my new favourite authors. Right, so next is a surprise, which I was not expecting to be one of my books of the year, and that is Some Kind of Wonderful by Giovanna Fletcher. This is a romantic novel. It's contemporary, and it is about a girl called Lizzie who breaks up with her partner of 10 years and goes on a journey of self-discovery following her breakup, because she doesn't really know who she is anymore on her own. She only knows who she is as part of a couple. And this I loved, because I loved journeys of self-discovery. I loved that it was set in an area of the country where I grew up. It was set in the time period that I grew up, and there's a lot of cultural references that I could draw on. And I just loved the fact that I couldn't wait to get back to it and read it, and it made me feel so happy, so cheerful. And like I say, while it's not a literary book, I just think that doesn't matter. The thing that matters is that I loved it, I really enjoyed it, and it's made it onto my list, which is a surprise, but a very pleasant surprise. The next one is a massive surprise for me that I ended up on my list, because I didn't really enjoy it that much when I read it, and I was a bit gutted that I didn't enjoy it that much when I read it. But I've thought about it a lot since I read it, and that's why, even though I gave it 3 stars, that's why it's ended up on my book of the year list so far, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So I wanted to love this because obviously it's a classic, and I just really wanted to love it. When I read it, it was a labour of love. There was lots of descriptive text, lots and lots and lots and lots, very heavy on descriptive text, not so heavy on dialogue. I found it quite depressing because there are parts where, you know, Jane is in a very difficult situation in her childhood. She has played times where she's homeless, times when she's hungry, times when she is really struggling, and it dragged me down, I have to say, when I read it. But it's a story of hope. Jane is like a really strong woman, and she's a feminist, and I really love that. And the writing is absolutely stunning, like some of the best writing I've ever read in my life. And the only reason I didn't give it a higher rating was because of the enjoyment factor, not because of the writing. The writing is incredible. It was the enjoyment factor. But like I say, I've thought about it a lot since I read it, and I can evoke, you know, how I felt when I read it by thinking about it. And so despite the fact that I didn't love it, it has made it onto my list. There's only one more book which I need to talk about, and that was one that I got from the library, and that is The Miseducation of Cameron Post by Emily Danforth. This is an LGBTQ plus book about Cameron Post, who is a gay teenager. It talks about her growing up, her first forays into relationships, her first crushes, her first loves, and then she meets a girl called Coley, and Coley is, she thinks of herself as being straight, and then she gets into a relationship with Cameron, and she is highly kind of, I guess she's confused and a bit uncomfortable about this relationship, and they get caught and they grow up. They are in a very religious community with very traditional values, and Cameron gets sent to a school called God's Promise, where they are trying to cure people of same-sex attraction. They won't call it being gay or being homosexual because they don't believe that those things actually exist. They just believe in same-sex attraction. And so this is about how they are trying to change Cameron and force her to be something that she's not, force her to try and feel disgusted and ashamed of herself, and do this in the name of religion. And it was, that kind of thing makes me so mad. So I really loved this book, and Cameron was such a strong, awesome person, and I don't know how she managed to get through what they were doing to her, to be honest. I just found it to be like a great book. It was set a bit, she is growing up in the early 90s. Well, she's probably about 8 years older than me now. So, but I could still get some of the references and the time period, and I really enjoyed that aspect of things. It was a really awesome book. The film I didn't enjoy as much because they skipped out the first half of the book, which I thought was a bit of a cop-out. But anyway, so they were my books of the year. I think there was 11 of them in total. Let me know if you've read any of those books and what you thought. Let me know what your books of the year were. And exciting to see what the next year brings in terms of books. Thank you, as I said, for your support of my channel. If you don't subscribe to my channel, I would love it if you did, and I would love to hear from you. So have a wonderful new year, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.